Aloha, Stillman!
From Kim Myers-Stewart,
Andrea Neulander,
Lori Dawn,
and Lisa Wall.
the title of our presentation is The Importance of Professional Development, with a focus on adolescent and youth counseling.
Just before we begin, we thought we'd give just a bit of history on the American Counseling Association, which is sponsoring this conference. The ACA is a professional organization of counselors in the United States. It is the world's largest association exclusively representing professional counselors. Founded in 1952, its stated mission is to promote the counseling profession and to uphold human dignity and diversity in counseling. We are going to talk a little bit about our experience here, and then we're going to focus in on a specific issue represented in the DSM-5.
As we all know, it's really important to continue to professionally develop. And being professionally developed refers to many types of educational experiences, one being here in Hawaii. Personal and professional development are essential to continue good practice in counseling and therapy. While being at this conference, the idea allowed us to continually assess, fulfill our own needs, and it allowed for us to foster the potential to provide better services for our clients. This PD opportunity has also allowed us to explore our previous training and build on skills that can be useful in expanding and understanding major issues and our own attitudes towards race, culture, gender, etc. This conference has provided the opportunity for us to consider how we as counselors can further our own understanding of counseling, the theory, the practice, as well as reflecting on our own self-development.
It also has given us a wonderful opportunity to promote self-care in counseling, and we most certainly focused on the mind, the body, and the spirit. And we're going to include just a few photos of our experience here so you can really get an understanding of how very, very valuable and fantastic this experience has been for us.
As part of our professional development, we started out with a lovely, relaxing trip to the beach. We traveled the North and South Shore in our very humbling transportation. After taking in a bit of the local culture, we hiked the Diamond Head Mountain to enjoy the serene sunrise at 6:30 a.m. All of these experiences have enriched our minds, bodies, and souls. Now we will get down to the business of the conference.
One of the first sessions that we took part in was a session called Empowering Youth Victimized by Cyberbullying, a solution-focused Alderian counseling model, and it was presented by Janet Hicks. This was a very valuable session in terms of what we're experiencing in Nova Scotia right now with cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is a growing concern, as we know, and it's due to the enhanced use of social media and other forms of technology. The anonymous nature of cyberbullying offers an opportunity for students to bully others without being seen. The consequences of such actions can be devastating for the victim. And as we all know, programs are needed to address this issue. During this session, it demonstrated the use of solution-focused Alderian counseling model with a youth who had been a victim of cyberbullying. So the model infused art, a solution-focused and Alderian technique style into the session, which showed us how to empower the victim. The model also illustrated a live role play, as well as case studies and practical exercises. One of the focuses of this role play was the nature of empowering the victim and also the importance of parent education in terms of the technology used for cyberbullying.
The session I'd like to tell you about was called Let's Have a Real Discussion About Race and Racism, Your Life, Your Work, and Your Soul. This session was provided by Fred Bemak, who is a counseling professor at George Mason University. He is the founder of Counselors Without Borders, and he has published extensively in the field of cross-cultural and multicultural psychology. The next presenter was Rita Chi Ying Chung. She's the author of Social Justice Counseling, Next Steps Beyond Multiculturalism. She has a Chinese name, and she looked Chinese, but when she spoke, it was with a very strong New Zealand accent, as she had worked there for many years. The lead presenter was a gentleman named Lee Mun Hua. He is an internationally renowned professor, author, poet, filmmaker, counselor, and Asian folkteller. He began the session by using his singing bowl to signal for silence. This man has been on the Oprah show and displayed a note from President Barack Obama. He's done a TED Talk called But I'm an American. The reason I tell you this is because I have been so impressed throughout this conference with the caliber of the speakers. They are really the top of their profession. The very first thing we were asked to do at this conference was to go find someone in the room who is as different from you as you can possibly find. I found a man named Jarrell Hill, and the question we were asked to discuss with each other was, talk about the first time you remember being different from everyone else. And the talk proceeded from there. So on the whole, this was a real and honest dialogue about race and racism and why we shy away from these difficult talks. And yet, as counselors, we need to be culturally competent to be professionally effective with a dramatically increasing ethnic and racial clientele. Throughout the session, we had very honest and deeply touching dialogues that impacted our hearts, our mind, and our souls on both professional and a personal level. I made a good friend, and we will be keeping in touch. This was an outstanding presentation I can't say enough about.
So the session that I'm going to talk about is called Stories We've Heard, Stories We've Told, Life-Changing Narratives in Counseling in Everyday Life by Jeffrey A. Codler. In this session, he discusses a lot about how our stories can help people get through when they are stuck. It states here that if there was one theme that responds most universally to the diversity of our clients and yet provides a unifying framework for what we do in sessions, it is the influential power of storytelling. In one sense, we are all professional storytellers, whether the anecdotes are offered in the form of self-disclosure, metaphors, case examples, or even fables, fairy tales, or jokes. We are attempting to influence and persuade people through the power of stories, as well as hold the stories of those we help. In this session, Jeffrey reviewed the way that stories are an integral part of counseling and how we can be far more effective, skilled, and creative in the way we approach our efforts to maximize our impact. He also showed us the importance of being humorous and humble and telling our own stories to impact our clients to help them through the tough times.
The session that I'd like to talk about is called Living Legends in Counseling, Professional Development and Professional Wisdom. We had the privilege to sit in the same room with some of the most world-renowned counselors that are still with us today, including John Carlson, Jeffrey A. Codler, Mark Pope, Howard Christenbaum, Gerald Corey, Debbie Ellis, Robert E. Wollendong, Marchetta Evans. We had an intimate and revealing and honest and very provocative discussion with this panel of legends, and these prominent authors, theorists, and practitioners not only talk the talk, but they walk the walk as well. We had an opportunity to hear about their personal lives, what they teach to others, issues that related to critical incidences, challenges, frustrations, joys, and sources of pride that existed throughout their long and distinguished careers. With this group, we didn't know what to expect, but we certainly knew that we were privileged to be with such wonderful scholars.
Due to the nature of this assignment, we were only able to discuss a few of the sessions that we found to be particular favorites and outstanding. As Andrea mentioned, we had the privilege to interact with legends in the field, collaborate with fellow students and professional counselors. Here are some of the additional educational sessions that we had the opportunity and privilege to attend.
In keeping with the requirements of the class assignment, we decided to focus on one of the diagnoses featured in the DSM-5, using play therapy and eating disorder treatment techniques for use with individuals and groups. And therefore, the rest of this presentation will focus on feeding and eating disorders.
The chapter on feeding and eating disorders in the 5th edition of the DSM-5 includes several changes to better represent the symptoms and behaviors of patients dealing with these conditions across the lifespan. Among the most substantial changes are recognition of binge eating disorders, revisions to the diagnostic criteria for anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa, and inclusions of pica, rumination, and avoidant restrictive food intake disorders. The DSM-5 lists the latter three among disorders usually first diagnosed in infancy, childhood, or adolescence.
Some of the objectives and items to follow in our presentation include the explanation of Axline's 8 basic principles of play therapy. We're going to list 3 ways that play therapy techniques can assist clients with eating disorders. We're going to articulate 2 significant multicultural considerations. And finally, to gain some knowledge regarding evidence-based treatments for eating disorders and the efficacy of play therapy.
The 3 things we'll be focusing on concerning eating disorders in the DSM-5 are anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder.
The presentation that we attended focused on some eye-opening American statistics. We thought that we would also include some eye-opening Canadian statistics as well. In America, 1 in 10 young women have either had anorexia or bulimia. 80% of women are dissatisfied with their bodies. 42% of first and third grade girls want to be thinner. 80% of 9 to 11-year-old girls are very often on diets. 69% of 5th to 12th grade girls reported that magazine pictures influence their idea of a perfect body shape. For anorexia and bulimia, male to female ratio is 1 to 10. For binge eating disorder, 40% are male. Eating disorders are becoming more common, and those affected are getting younger. In Canada, statistics show that 23% of grade 6 girls rated their body image as being too fat. That number increased to 44% for grade 10 girls. 20% of grade 6 boys reported their body image as being too fat, whereas only 19% of grade 10 boys felt that way. Also in Canada, 29% of grade 10 girls and 9.1% of grade 10 boys report they are currently on a diet. These are the most current statistics the Government of Canada has posted on their website. It would be interesting to see how these statistics have changed in 2014.
In our session, one of the things they focused on with the treatment of eating disorders were multicultural considerations. They focused on the importance of stopping and weighing the needs of your clients before you choose your theoretical approach. These slides are some of the things that you should consider, and some of the theoretical approaches that might best serve in the treatment of feeding and eating disorders.
Play therapy is a form of counseling or psychotherapy that uses play to communicate with and help people, especially children, to prevent or resolve psychosocial challenges. This is thought to help them towards better social integration, growth, and development.
Virginia May Axline was a psychologist and one of the pioneers in the use of play therapy. The following slide outlines Virginia Axline's 8 basic principles to play therapy.
These principles include: number 1, establishing good rapport; number 2, acceptance of the child; number 3, establish permissiveness so that the child feels free to fully express their feelings; number 4,
Recognize feelings and reflect them back so that the child gains insight in behavior.
5, maintain a deep respect for the child's ability to solve his or her problems. 6, the child leads the way, the therapist follows. 7, recognize therapy as a gradual process. 8, establish only necessary limits.
Despite what you are using play therapy for as a theoretical consideration, it is important to look at the multicultural considerations. You might want to include in your repertoire of toys ethnic dolls and foods, cultural music and books, crayons and paints that reflect the skin tones of your possible clients. You also need to keep in mind cultural norms such as silence, the roles of gender, the incorporation of cultural issues in play, for example, decision making, and by all means, you should take opportunities to seek out multicultural immersion experiences.